Star Trek: The Next Generation, Starfleet Academy, Secret of the Lizard People, Chapter 5. By the time the group reached another access panel leading to the corridor outside, Data had pretty much recovered. His reactions were still a trifle slower than they normally were, but he had full use of all his limbs, and he could speak normally again. "You know," said Cinna, as they waited for Cadet Petros to scan the hallway for lizard beings, "I thought that might have been the end of you back there." Her expression was clearly one of relief, with no sign of the resentment she had displayed for him over the past few days. The android returned her gaze. "I thought it was the end of me as well. Fortunately, my system proved more resilient than either of us anticipated." "There's no one in the corridor. At least not for 50 meters in either direction," reported Petros. Dr. Steinberg nodded approvingly. "All right. We should be far enough along now to take our chances out there, but first..." Tapping her communicator, she called for Commander Sierra. As before, there was no response. Apparently, the radiation was a barrier to communications in this area as well. "Oh well," she said, attempting to make light of the situation, though her concern was unmistakably etched in her face. "I guess we're still on our own, aren't we?" "It would be nice," Majors remarked, "if we had some idea of where these creatures came from. They're obviously too primitive to be the aliens who sent the Mayday signal." "Yes," agreed Petros, "or for that matter, to have staged an invasion of the station. So what are they?" Data turned to her. "I have been pondering that question myself," he confessed. "It is possible that the lizard beings began as live cargo, kept in some sort of containers, perhaps. When the station collided with the asteroid, these containers may have been damaged, allowing the creatures to escape." "Interesting theory," allowed the medical officer. "Until we find some evidence to back it up, it's not much more than that." "Right now," Majors noted, "the more important question is who did send the signal and where are they? All dead, destroyed by the creatures, or just hiding from them in another part of the station?" Even before he could complete his question, Cadet Petros was scanning the area for non-lizard life forms. Given their failure to locate the station's inhabitants earlier, Data didn't expect any positive results. Nonetheless, there was a faint smile on Petros's face as she looked up from her tricorder. "I think I found some of them," she told the others. "Where?" asked Dr. Steinberg. The cadet focused her attention on her tricorder again and used her free hand to point. "Over there," she said, indicating a point almost directly beyond the access panel. The android and his companions looked at one another. "What are we waiting for?" asked the medical officer. "Let's go." Cadet Majors removed the access panel. One by one, they slipped out of the tube that had been their salvation. First Data, then Cinna, then Petros and Steinberg. And when the last of them had emerged into the corridor, Majors put the access panel back in place. "This way," announced Petros, intent on her tricorder again. She made a left turn and walked purposefully down the corridor. The android saw Cadet Majors look around warily, so he did the same. Even though their scan hadn't turned up the presence of any lizard beings, Data knew it was advisable to remain alert. A moment later, however, they reached their destination. A pair of large, silver doors set into the bulkhead. Together, the doors made up a perfect semicircle. "For a while there," Dr. Steinberg commented, "I was beginning to think this place didn't have any entrances or exits, just an unending series of corridors." "Do you think they open like the doors to the shuttle bay?" asked Cinna, taking a step closer to them. As if in answer to her question, the silver surfaces slid apart, revealing a room beyond. The Yana muttered something beneath her breath as she led the way inside. It wasn't long before the others followed, with Data bringing up the rear. No sooner had he crossed the threshold than the door slid closed behind him. The place was much larger than the android had expected. Enclosed in a huge, transparent dome that made it seem open to the stars, it contained an impressive variety of trees, shrubs, and flowers arranged in a neat and orderly fashion. Plant life was everywhere in thick profusion, each specimen distinguished by a different color and shape and texture. Some of them displayed flowers or leaves, and some had more exotic appendages, but all were recognizable as living, growing flora. "What do you think this is?" asked Petros, turning as she looked around. "Some sort of botanical garden?" Data would have answered in the affirmative, but he didn't want to take a chance on being wrong. Majors always had seen... Majors had always... Majors already had seen him at his most useless. I did it. He didn't want to expose any more of his flaws by supporting the wrong conclusion. "I wouldn't be surprised," said Dr. Steinberg, with the confidence the android wished he felt as well. "After all, many of our stations have gardens. Why not this one?" Majors wiped away some of the moisture that had gathered on his faceplate and brushed it on the tricorder of his containment garb. "Glad I'm wearing a suit," he remarked offhandedly. "You can do the backstroke in this soup." The android tried to picture such an activity, but he couldn't. Apparently, Major's remark wasn't meant to be taken literally. "No sign of the occupants," Majors went on, taking the immediate vicinity in with a glance. "But according to our instruments, they're here somewhere." "What's that?" asked Cinna. A few steps ahead of the group, she pointed to something that the rest of them couldn't see. Approaching his friend, Data followed her gesture to a short, squat tree with feathery yellow filaments growing out of it, and saw part of a boot sticking out from behind the trunk. "There's somebody down this way," barked Diana for the benefit of the others. She knelt as she got closer to our objective. The android, who was right behind her, saw that the unconscious humanoid form was representative of a species he had never seen before, one with pale yellow skin and large oval eyes. The alien's eyes were closed now, his face in repose. As the rest of the team gathered around Cinna's find, Dr. Steinberg ran her medical tricorder over him. Her brow wrinkling, she considered the results. "Radiation fever," suggested Majors. "Or maybe an attack by one of the lizard creatures?" The doctor grunted. "Certainly not an attack. There are no wounds, no broken bones. Not even so much as a bruise, but it's not radiation fever either." Another possibility occurred to Data. Is it possible that this is a natural response to dangerous environmental conditions? He blurted it out before he had a chance to think twice. Dr. Steinberg looked up at him. For a long, uncomfortable moment, the android was certain that she would dismiss his idea as ridiculous. "Actually," she said, "that's just what I was thinking. Some species withdraw into an apparently comatose state as a way of protecting themselves. I've got a feeling that this is one of them." Cinna scanned the place. "There were supposed to be others here, and if they're all in this condition, with those lizards running loose..." "They are fortunate they were not set upon and killed," Data noted, completing her statement. It was only afterward that he realized he need not have done so. Cinna's sentence fragment was sufficient to convey her meaning. "Fan out," instructed the doctor. "See if you can find the rest of them." Even before she finished, Data was on the move. His search had only gone on for a few seconds before he spied another of the now familiar boots. It was protruding from the fringe of a spiky orange thicket. "Dr. Steinberg," he said, "I have located a second alien." He pointed as he started toward it. "Over here!" "Make that 3, responded Petros, who was moving in a different direction entirely. "No, wait. Looks like a couple of them." "I've got one too," called Majors, who was pursuing still a third course. Bring them all over here, the doctor told them. It'll be easier to take care of them if one of the lizards somehow finds his way in. Before long, they had collected all the aliens into a single area of the garden, the same location where they discovered the first one. There were 5 of them in all, 3 males and 2 females, each as pale and insensible as the next. Cinna shook her head. They must have thought this was a good place to take refuge. From the lizard creatures, I mean, not the radiation. But Dr. Steinberg wasn't listening to the Yana. It seemed to the android. She was still sitting on her haunches and running her tricorder over the aliens, apparently intrigued by something she had yet to share with them. Finally, she leaned back and grunted. How about that, she said. What is it? Asked Majors. I thought I saw some similarities in the basic skeleton, the doctor replied, but the DNA patterns confirm it. Our friends here and the lizard beings seem to represent 2 branches of the same family tree. You mean they're related? Asked Petros, unable to conceal her surprise. Dr. Steinberg nodded. Looks that way. Not all that closely, mind you. There could be millions of years of evolution separating them. In much the same way as the Terran ape and modern Homo sapiens, Data observed. Yeah, said the doctor, but more along the lines of, we are one of 3 chimpanzees. There's the bonobo chimpanzee, the common chimpanzee, and the human chimpanzee. And we say that because we are more closely related to both chimpanzee species and they to us than any of the 3 of us is to gorillas. Fascinating, said Data. I did not know that much about human evolution. You should take time to learn, said the doctor. So what does that tell us? That both these aliens and lizard beings came from the same planet. That these people must have known what they were transporting, concluded Petros, but felt secure with whatever safeguards they'd built in. True, Dr. Steinberg confirmed. And that the collision with the asteroid, not to mention the ensuing radiation, put a wrench in their plans. But we still don't know why they were carrying this kind of cargo, Majors reminded them. His jaw muscles worked. And we're no closer to securing the help of the natives than we were before. Petros sighed the doctor. Is there any way to revive them? Maybe just enough to get some answers? Steinberg shook her head. Dangerous and ill-advisable. We don't know enough about their physiology to try and bring them out of their comas, and that won't change until I can get them to sickbay. There are quite likely others like them on the station, Data offered tentatively. The ones who sent the distress call, for instance. Perhaps they can supply us with the information we seek. Unless, said Petros, indicating the beings at their feet, it was these people who sent the distress call. Majors nodded once in terse agreement. And even if it wasn't, the corridors are still full of lizards. Again, his jaw muscles fluttered. Talk about dangerous and inadvisable. We make one wrong move, and we're history. The android was considering Major's viewpoint when something happened, something quick and violent and too powerful to resist. The next thing Data knew, he was picking himself up off the floor and watching the others do the same. The android was unharmed, but his companions were nursing bruises and even a few minor abrasions. They had fallen victim to another quake, he observed, just as Commander Sierra had predicted they might. And this one was worse than the one they had experienced earlier. Figures, moaned Petros, holding her arm and wincing in pain. The same darn elbow. Sir, said Majors, as he helped Dr. Steinberg to her feet, if you recall, Commander Sierra told us we were to return to the shuttle bay if the quakes got much worse, or if we encountered some other danger. At this point, I'd say that both those things have happened. The physician nodded as she brushed herself off. Normally, Mr. Majors, I'd agree with you, except we've found what we're looking for. It seemed to Data that there was a harder line to Steinberg's jaw now. And that changes Everything, she finished. Chapter 6. The doctor frowned. The way I see it, it's up to us to save these people now that we know where at least some of them are. There are two possible ways to do that. We can try to evacuate the station gradually, taking a chance each time that we'll be caught and destroyed by the lizard beings. Or we can take a shot at moving the station away from the radiation source, allowing the Republic to beam off our team, Commander Sierra's team, and, if possible, both sets of aliens. She licked her lips. My preference, of course, would be the latter option. Like any Starfleet officer, I hate the idea of allowing any life form, even a hostile one, to be destroyed. Unfortunately, to save both the occupants of the station and the lizard beings, we would have to have the expertise to operate the station and some assurance that the thing is still navigable, which it may not be. A long shot, at best. Data replied before he could think better of it. I can obtain the expertise to operate the station, he said. Everyone looked at him. You can obtain it? Echoed Cadet Majors. His eyes were slitted. He sounded skeptical, to say the least. The android nodded. He already regretted having spoken so boldly, but it was too late to retract his statement. Yes, he confirmed. I can learn to operate the station. After all, my positronic brain is essentially a computer. It should not be all that difficult for me to communicate with the computer on the station. Once that link is established, I can determine if the navigation and propulsion systems need repairs, repair them if they do, and attempt to operate them if they do not. Dr. Steinberg appeared interested. This linking up with the station's computer, she paused. You couldn't do that from here, could you? I would need to reach the station's operations center, Data replied. That is the place most likely to offer such access. Majors was shaking his head. It seemed to the android that this was a gesture of derision intended to question the credibility of Data's remarks. A moment later, this observation was confirmed. We're talking about an android, a mechanical man running an entire station, Majors pointed out, and an alien station at that. He looked at the doctor, at Petros, and finally at Cinna. Oh, he can probably learn a few things by hooking up to its computer, but operating a facility this size takes more than knowledge, it takes instincts. He glared pointedly at Data. And that's one thing our friend here is lacking. In fact, he'd probably be the first to admit that. The android had to concede the cadet's point. That is correct, he said. I have no instincts, or at least none that I'm aware of. Wait a minute, interjected Cinna. Data's got more instincts than he gives himself credit for. A few weeks ago, he took charge of a Federation ship called Yosemite, a ship that he came aboard knowing nothing about. If he could do that, maybe he can run the station as well. Majors grunted. From what I understand, he lived on a Federation ship for years with nothing to do but educate himself. Is it any wonder that after all that time, he knew how to run that particular kind of vessel? Yana's blue streaks darkened. I suppose you were there then? She blurted. I suppose... A growl stopped Cinna dead in her tracks. It was exactly the kind of sound they'd heard just before they were attacked by the lizard beings. Glancing in the direction of the doors, the android saw that they were still closed. Besides, he thought, I would have heard them if they had opened. Yet there was a lizard creature in this room with them, and judging by the sound it had made, it was somewhere nearby, hidden in the profusion of alien foliage, about to pounce. Then, before Data could locate it, the creature showed itself. Bolting from cover, it flung itself at Cadet Petros with such blinding speed that neither human nor Yana had a chance to react. Fortunately, the android was a little quicker than his companions. Hurtling across the intervening space, he managed to grab hold of the lizard being's shoulder and drive it off its mark. It was only as the creature rounded on Data that the android realized what a chance he had taken. The last time he had recovered from the lizard being's electrical charge. This time he might have been incapacitated forever. Still, as the creature coiled to leap at him, Data held his ground. He had a responsibility to protect his team, after all, just as they would have protected him if their roles were reversed. However, as luck would have it, there was no need for his resolve to be put to the test. Before the lizard being could strike, a ruby-red phaser beam caught it full in the chest and sent it flying back into a soft bed of purple blossoms. It didn't move again. Its scaly chest barely rose and fell with the rhythm of its breathing. Glancing back over his shoulder, the android saw that it was Cinna who had taken the creature down. Her phaser was still in her hand, aimed at the lizard being as if she expected it to resume its assault at any moment. However, that seemed unlikely to Data. As he approached the creature, it became increasingly obvious that Cinna's close-range blast had subdued it. "Careful," warned Dr. Steinberg, who had a phaser in her hand as well. She was looking all about them, peering into the thick foliage like a bird whose sense of self-preservation had been stirred. There could be more of them. But Petra shook her head. Holding up her tricorder as evidence, she said, "It doesn't look like it, sir. At least not at the moment." "How did it get in here?" asked Majors. It was difficult even for an android not to hear the tension in his voice, or to see the pallor that had taken over his face. Data wondered why Major's reaction was more intense than that of the doctor or his fellow cadets. If the android didn't know better, he would have concluded that the human was succumbing to a fear response. However, this was Glenn Majors, a proven model of confidence. Surely, Data told himself, there has to be another reason for the human's appearance. "That's a good question," said Steinberg, in reply to Major's question. "Until we know the answer, let's keep our phasers out and our eyes peeled." She took out her tricorder. "In the meantime, I'm going to take a look at our uninvited guest here." Complying with the woman's orders, the android took out his phaser and helped stand guard. However, that didn't stop him from glancing over his shoulder from time to time. Without a hint of hesitation, the medical officer walked up to the unconscious lizard being. It only took a few seconds to scan the scaly body, but Dr. Steinberg lingered a lot longer than that over the results she saw on the tricorder's readout. "Interesting," she noted at last. "It appears there's a blockage in one of the creature's glands." "Does that have some special significance?" Data inquired. The physician looked up at him. "Hard to say," she answered. "For all I know, it's supposed to be blocked." As the android absorbed this information, he continued to examine their surroundings for some sign of additional lizard beings. After a second or two, his search took him past the collection of unconscious station occupants lying side by side on the ground. Even a human would have been hard-pressed not to notice that something had changed among the occupants. Something rather significant, in fact. "Dr. Steinberg," he said. The medical officer turned to him. "Yes, Data?" "It seems," he reported, "one of the aliens is missing." Dr. Steinberg's reaction was one of incredulity. "That's not possible," she responded. "We would have noticed." Crossing the room under the cadet's watchful gaze, she counted the unconscious forms herself. As the android had pointed out, there were 4 of them, not the 5 that had been there only a little while ago. The medical officer looked around, no doubt wondering how they might have misplaced an entire sentient being. "Lord," she said finally, yielding to the evidence of her own eyes. "You're right, Data. One of them is missing." Suddenly, Cinna snapped her fingers. A habit she'd picked up from her human peers in her short time at the academy. "One of the aliens vanishes," she said, leaving the comment hanging in the air. The android followed her gaze as it shifted meaningfully to the other side of the room, where the lizard being was still prone in a bed of purple flowers. Abruptly, Data understood. "An alien vanishes, and a lizard creature appears," he remarked, finishing Cinna's thought for her. "No," muttered Cadet Majors, as he considered the possibility and summarily rejected it. "It's got to be a coincidence." However, Petros seemed not to have heard Majors. Her brow wrinkling as she peered at Data, she asked, "Are you saying—" The android nodded, anticipating the remainder of her question. "Indeed," he said. I am. As bizarre as it sounds, it may be that the lizard being who just attacked us was an unconscious alien a scant few seconds earlier. Dr. Steinberg grunted softly. I'll tell you what. That would go a long way toward explaining the presence of the lizard creatures on the station. They could all be aliens who first went comatose and then somehow regressed into primitive, savage versions of themselves. But why, asked Petros, would they pick this particular time to undergo their metamorphosis? It could be an effect of the radiation, Data suggested. The doctor nodded. Maybe that blocked-up gland I found in the lizard being is supposed to control the alien's metabolism. When working properly, it keeps the aliens in their evolved state, and when not working normally, it allows them to devolve into beasts. That could be it, agreed Cinna. After all, no species would venture into space if it expected to change into a pack of primitive creatures halfway through its travels. Steinberg turned to Petros, who had become their unofficial timekeeper. How long have we been here? Asked the medical officer. The cadet's reply was quick and accurate. 2 hours and 47 minutes, sir. A little more than 3 hours until planetary ignition. Steinberg looked dubiously at the 4 remaining aliens. Under the circumstances, she began, I think we can rule out the possibility of evacuating these people. Otherwise, we might find that we're carrying unconscious aliens 1 minute and savage lizard creatures the next. So we head for the... Before the cadet could complete her statement, the station lurched ahead. Again. It wasn't as bad as the second time, but it was vicious enough to cut their legs out from under them. As the first one up, the android offered to help Dr. Steinberg to her feet, but she waved him away. I'm getting rather tired of this, she announced. Brushing a stray lock of hair out of her eyes, the medical officer turned to Petros. You were saying? Petros shrugged. It looks like we've got no choice but to look for the operations center, she concluded. Cinna nodded. It's the only real option open to us, isn't it? Cadet Majors looked at her. I don't think so, he said calmly.